This video is going to explain what a nervous pathway is. As you know, the job of the nervous system is to detect changes and respond appropriately to them. But there is a lot that goes on between the change and the response. To detect a change, process the information, decide on the correct response and do the response, it requires messages to be sent. The pathway along which the messages travel is very important. The simplest pathway is called a reflex arc. But what are reflexes? Reflexes are there so that we can respond to danger, so that we can prevent damage to our bodies. Here are a few examples. At the top here, we can see somebody about to tread on a pin. This is going to cause damage to their foot. Therefore, the leg will have to be removed from the pin as quickly as possible. In the second picture here, we can see a hand being put into flames, again, burning the skin, damaging the body. And in the final picture at the bottom here, we can see the pupil reflex. When bright light is shone onto an eye, the pupil will constrict, reducing the light let into the eye and preventing damage to the light-sensitive cells at the back. In order to effectively prevent damage to our bodies, reflexes must be very fast. Therefore, the conscious part of the brain is not involved in deciding on the response. Here are two examples with the nerve cells shown in the correct positions within the body. As you can see, we cannot respond unless the message goes to the central nervous system for coordination first. On the left-hand side here, you can see the black arrows travelling up from where the stimulus was detected and into the spinal cord, part of the central nervous system. On the right over here, again, the messages are travelling along the arm into the spinal cord, part of the central nervous system. There are 3 neurons in the pathway, shown on these diagrams in red, green and blue. The first neuron is called the sensory neuron, and the second the relay neuron in green, and the last the motor neuron in blue. There are also nerve connections that go up to the brain, shown by these arrows going upwards. However, this is only after the response has taken place. If we let the brain decide what to do, the response would take too long and the body would get damaged. So let's run through the nerves and the neurons and the order of all the components in a reflex arc. The first thing that happens is the change in the external environment, which is called the stimulus. In the 2 examples shown above, the stimulus here on the left, in example A, would be stepping on a pin. The stimulus on the right would be hand on hot flame. But we wouldn't know this was happening unless we could detect these changes. The detection is done by receptors. Remember, all receptors are specialised cells. In the example A, the receptor would be the pressure or pain sensitive cells in the skin on the foot. In example B, the receptor would be heat sensitive cells in the skin of the hand. From the receptor, the message is then created as an electrical impulse and it travels through the neurons, the first of which is the sensory neuron, which is the 3rd component in the reflex arc. The sensory neurons connect the receptors to the central nervous system. So as you can see here, the sensory neuron is going all the way up the leg, a single neuron, right into the spinal cord. And over here on the right, again, the sensory neuron, the message, the electrical impulse is travelling all the way up the arm into the spinal cord. The second nerve cell or neuron in the pathway is the relay neuron. And this is the 4th component of the reflex arc. Relay neurons are found only inside the spinal cord. They do not go in or out. And they connect the sensory neuron to the motor neuron. So the electrical impulses travel from the sensory neuron through the relay neuron. The third neuron in the pathway and the fifth component in the reflex arc is the motor neuron. The message, having passed through the relay neuron, then passes down the motor neuron, where it will then eventually be passed on to the last part of the reflex arc. Here you can see the electrical impulse travelling down the motor neuron in both of our examples. The next part of the reflex arc is called the effector, and it is the effector that does the response. All effectors are either muscles or glands. In the two examples shown here, both of the effectors are muscles. In example A, it would be the quad muscle on the front of the thigh, and in example B, it would be the biceps muscle in the upper arm. The effectors perform the response. In the case of a muscle, this would be a contraction, and in the case of a gland, this would be a secretion. In both examples, it is muscles contracting. In example A, the quad will contract, the leg will lift, and the foot will come off the pin. In example B, the biceps will contract, and the arm will bend, and the hand will be removed from the flame. So there you have it, a reflex arc, the simplest type of nervous pathway. We have linked the change in the external environment, known as the stimulus, with the appropriate response, which will minimise danger to the human body. In a GCSE exam question, you may be given any example. It may not be a pin in a foot, it may not be a hot flame on a hand. You have to apply this knowledge to the situation in which you are given. Obviously, the three neurons, parts 3, 4 and 5, will be the same. However, what you write as your stimulus, receptor, effector and response will be different depending on the example that you have been given.